My name is Margaret and I'm 63 years old. I never imagined I'd be spending Christmas Eve alone, staring at my phone, waiting for it to ring. Let me take you back to where this story really begins. 28 years ago, I married Robert Hayes. He was a sales manager at a pharmaceutical company, charming and ambitious. I was a school teacher, patient and nurturing. We built what I thought was a good life together in our suburban home in Ohio. We had one son, Daniel, a bright boy with his father's determination and, I hoped, my kindness. Robert traveled often for work. Sometimes he'd be gone for days, even weeks. I managed our home, raised our son, and waited. I trusted him completely. That was my first mistake. When Daniel was 15, I discovered the truth quite by accident. Robert had left his laptop open. An email notification appeared on the screen. It was from a woman named Jennifer. The message was brief but clear. She was thanking him for a wonderful weekend together. My hands trembled as I opened his email folder. There were dozens of messages, months of correspondence, intimate words, plans to meet. She wasn't the only one. I sat in our kitchen for hours that day, just staring at the wall. The afternoon light faded into evening. I heard Daniel come home from school, go to his room, start his music, normal sounds in a life that had just shattered. When Robert came home that night, I confronted him calmly. I'd had time to prepare. He denied everything at first. Then, when faced with the evidence, he minimized it, called it meaningless, said it was just the stress of travel and loneliness. I gave him a choice. End it all. Commit to our marriage, go to counseling, or leave. He chose to stay. He promised to change. He cried, he begged, and foolishly, because I wanted to believe in the man I'd married, I forgave him. But Daniel had heard everything that night. Our voices had carried up the stairs. He'd heard his father's betrayal and his mother's pain. From that day forward, something changed in my son. He became distant with me, as if my forgiveness had disappointed him. But toward his father, he grew closer. They formed a bond I couldn't penetrate. Robert did stop the affairs, as far as I knew. But the damage was done. Our marriage became a performance. We functioned as partners, but the love had drained away like water through a sieve. Years passed. Daniel grew into a man who looked like his father and, increasingly, acted like him too. He married young, at 24. To a woman named Melissa. She was sweet and a bit naive. They had their first child within a year, then another, and another. By the time Daniel was 35, he and Melissa had 9 children. 9 beautiful grandchildren that I adored. But I saw the signs. Daniel traveled for work constantly, just like his father had. Melissa looked exhausted, overwhelmed, raising all those children mostly alone. And Daniel, when he was home, seemed distant and irritable. I tried to talk to him once, gently, carefully. I mentioned that marriage takes work, that being present matters more than providing. He looked at me with cold eyes and said, "You mean like how you're present, Mom, waiting at home, making excuses?" His words stung because they held some truth. I had been too forgiving, too willing to pretend. Last year, Robert passed away, a heart attack. Sudden and unexpected. At the funeral, Daniel grieved loudly, dramatically. I grieved quietly, for the man Robert could have been, not the one he was. After Robert's death, I decided to make changes. I sold our large house and moved into a comfortable apartment. I started traveling, something I'd always wanted to do. I reconnected with old friends. I began living for myself. Then, a week before this Christmas, I overheard Daniel on the phone. I'd stopped by his house unexpectedly to drop off gifts for the children. The front door was unlocked, as it often was in their chaotic household. I heard Daniel's voice from his home office. He was talking to someone, his tone casual and cold. "Just dump all 9 kids with her for Christmas. She's got nothing else to do. Then you and I can finally have that week in Aspen we've been planning." There was a pause, then laughter. "Melissa won't even know. I'll tell her it's a business trip. She's too tired to question anything anymore." My heart stopped. He was talking about me, planning to use me so he could run off with another woman while his wife believed he was working. I stood in that hallway, holding a bag of wrapped presents, and something inside me crystallized. I quietly left the house, got in my car, and drove home. I spent the next few days thinking, planning, I remembered my own Christmas Eves, waiting for Robert to come home from work. Dinners. I remembered the loneliness. I remembered years of making excuses to Daniel about why his father missed his baseball games, his school plays, his graduation. I thought about Melissa, kind and exhausted Melissa, being deceived just as I had been, and I thought about those 9 grandchildren, who deserve better than to be pawns in their father's selfish games. So when Daniel called me 3 days before Christmas, his voice bright and artificially warm, asking if I could help out by taking all 9 kids for a week because he had an urgent business emergency, I knew exactly what to do. Of course, sweetheart, I said, bring them over on Christmas Eve. We'll have a wonderful time. I could hear the relief in his voice, the satisfaction. He thought he'd won. I spent the next few days preparing, not for the children, but for something else entirely. Christmas Eve arrived. Daniel showed up at my apartment at 4 in the afternoon, his SUV packed with children, luggage, and hurried instructions. "You're a lifesaver, Mom," he said, barely looking at me as the kids tumbled out of the vehicle. "I'll be back on the 31st. Actually, Daniel," I said calmly, "I need to talk to you for a moment." Inside, alone, something in my tone made him pause. He followed me into my apartment, leaving the children in the hallway with their bags. Once inside, I turned to face him. "I know about Aspen," I said quietly. "I know about her. I know everything." His face went pale, then red. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't," I said, my voice steady. "Don't insult me by lying. I've had enough lies to last a lifetime." He tried to bluster, to explain, to minimize, just like his father had. But I held up my hand. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "You're going to take these children home to Melissa. You're going to tell her the truth, all of it, and then you're going to let her decide what happens next." "You can't tell me what to do," he snapped. "You're right," I agreed. "I can't, but I can tell Melissa myself, and I will, right now, if you don't." I held up my phone. "I have her number ready." "Your choice." We stood there in my small living room, facing each other. I saw my son truly for the first time in years. I saw his father's selfishness, his sense of entitlement, his lack of empathy. But I also saw fear, and maybe, just maybe, shame. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, and for a moment, he sounded like a child again. "Because someone should have done it for me," I said softly. "Because those children deserve a father who's present, not one who abandons them. Because Melissa deserves the truth, and because I love you enough to stop you from making the same mistakes your father made." The silence stretched between us. Finally, he spoke. "What if I lose everything?" "Then you'll understand what you were willing to throw away," I said. He left without another word, gathering up the confused children and loading them back into the SUV. I watched from my window as they drove away. Then I called Melissa. She answered on the 3rd ring, sounding harried and tired. "Margaret, is everything okay? Did Daniel forget something?" "Melissa, dear," I said gently, "I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen carefully." I told her everything, about what I'd overheard, about the trip to Aspen, about the other woman. My voice remained calm and kind, but I didn't spare the details. There was a long silence when I finished. Then I heard her crying, softer and broken. "I'm so sorry," I said. "You didn't deserve this." "I knew," she whispered. "Deep down, I knew. I just didn't want to believe it." "I understand," I said. "More than you know." We talked for an hour. I told her about Robert, about my own marriage, about the years I'd lost making excuses and accepting crumbs of affection. "You have a choice now," I told her. "One I didn't make soon enough. Whatever you decide, I'll support you, and those children will be loved, no matter what." The next morning, Christmas Day, my phone rang. It was Daniel. "Where are you?" I asked. There was a long pause. Then, in a voice I hadn't heard since he was young, he said, "I'm home, with Melissa and the kids." "We're broken bar. We're talking." "Really talking?" "Good," I said. "She's so angry, Mom, so hurt." "Yes," I agreed. "She should be." Another pause. "I don't know if she'll forgive me." "That's her decision to make," I said. "Not yours. Your job is to be honest, to be present, and to earn back the trust you broke, if that's even possible." Dad never changed. he said quietly. Not really, no, I said. He didn't. But you're not your father, Daniel, unless you choose to be. I heard children's voices in the background. Laughter. The sounds of Christmas morning. I have to go, he said. But Mom, a broken bar. Thank you. I think. I don't know yet. Merry Christmas, son, I said. He hung up. I spent Christmas Day alone, as I'd expected to. But it didn't feel lonely. I made myself a nice meal, watched old movies, and felt, for the first time in years, at peace. In the weeks that followed, I learned that Daniel and Melissa were in counseling, that he'd quit his traveling sales job and found local work, that he was home every evening for dinner, that he was learning to be a father, not just a provider. It wasn't perfect. Melissa was still hurt, still uncertain. They had a long road ahead of them, but they were walking it together, in truth instead of lies. As for me, I booked a trip to Italy for the spring. I joined a book club. I started painting again, something I'd given up decades ago. And I learned something important. Sometimes love isn't about forgiveness. Sometimes it's about holding people accountable. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's worst choices. My son had called me seeking a favor that would enable his betrayal. Instead, I gave him something far more valuable. A chance to become a better man than his father. Whether he takes that chance is up to him, but I sleep peacefully now, knowing I finally found the courage I'd lacked all those years ago. The courage to choose truth over comfort, to choose dignity over peace at any price. That's my gift to my grandchildren. A grandmother who stood up, who said enough, who loved them enough to fight for the family they deserved. Even when it was hard, even when it hurt, especially then. A